This presentation will cover Chapter 25 of the Communication Systems book, that being lithography, or what it's also referred to as offset press printing. So in the lithography process, we do printing from a smooth surface. And as we go through these four different types of printing processes, we started with screen printing. In this case, we're doing lithography. Then we'll move forward with relief printing and gravure printing. They each have a different method to do the printing. And in this case, it's printing from a smooth surface. And the offset or lithography process works because of the fact that oil and grease or oil and water do not mix. And so as we go through this printing process, we use a combination of both either oil or grease and water to print onto our surfaces in order to transfer the image. Another component that's important to cover as we begin looking at these different printing processes is the color model that we use. And in the print process, we use what's referred to as the CMYK color model. CMYK meaning cyan, magenta, yellow, and the key color. And these are the four colors that make up all the other colors in a particular print product. This model is also referred to as the subtractive model because in this case, in order to create something of color, let's say that we want to print something that's blue. Say for example this cyan color, this blue that you see here. Well, what's actually happening is that the color that's on that page is actually subtracting or absorbing all other colors other than the blue, and the blue is what's being reflected back to you. And so what we see in terms of the paint color on a wall, the color of a magazine cover, anything that has been printed or painted in one way or another, what we are seeing is actually the color being reflected. And so in order to get that color reflected, we lay down an ink or a paint that absorbs all other colors other than that. This is a little bit different than what we would have in light generating sources such as the sun, such as the lights in the ceiling, or even our mobile computer devices, our computer screen, our cell phones. Those are generating light, and it uses a different model. But in terms of things that are absorbing light or subtracting light, then we use the CMYK. So in this case, what we do is we actually lay down 4 layers of colors, those being cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Black is referred to as the key color. And as we lay the combination of those 4 colors down, they make up all other colors. So in the case here with the butterfly wing, when something is printed, we see this nice full color production here. But in terms of the print process, what has happened is that we've printed it. It's been printed on 4 times with 4 different colors, that being the CMYK colors that you see up here. So it's pretty interesting how just 4 colors and the combination of those colors can make up all the other colors that we have in a print. And you're familiar with this in the process if you have an inexpensive DeskJet printer. When you buy your ink cartridges, you buy one that has the 3 colors, the cyan, magenta, and yellow, and that's in a cartridge itself. And then you also have the black cartridge. And it is those 4 colors that are printed that make up the rest of the colors on there. And that it does that in a process we're not necessarily going to get into in detail, but you can kind of see the detailed view there. And it does that through a process that enables it to make all those other colors. So this method is used in order for us to make colors using the lithography process. It was first developed back in 1795 by Elio Seinfelder, and he used grease and color in an image and a piece of limestone. The process that you just watched, the first video that you just watched, is really an example of the process that he went through. And as you watch that video, you can see how meticulous and how detailed and how long it takes to produce that image. But you got to come back and think about this was prior to the time where we could just easily hit print and make hundreds of copies. And so prior to that, everything was done by hand. And so if he wanted to, let's say in the image that the video you watched with the creation of that tree, that if you wanted to make 100 of those, you had to draw it by hand 100 different times. And so what Elios was able to find is that he could do it once, he could etch or create this image on that piece of limestone, and then using the lithography process, he could make multiple copies. So yes, there was a tremendous amount of work in the upfront, but then after that, once everything was ready to go, we could come back then and make copy after copy after copy, which was a powerful thing. Well, that has been advanced into what we had last century in the 20th century was more of a mechanical type process using what was called a lithographic press, or commonly known as an offset press. And in this case, the color would be loaded on the top of the machine, and the paper would go through, and it would go through a series of rollers and dampers and processes to transfer the ink. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. But like you see here with this blue machine is kind of an example. Now the interesting component here is that typically what we had to do is we still had to use those 4 color combinations, the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And so in this case what we would do is we would load the cyan color, the blue color, and we'd run all of our prints. Let's say we're doing 1,000 of them, we'd run 1,000 prints through with the blue, and then we'd come back and we'd have to clean the whole machine. We'd get all of the blue color out, and then we'd come back with the cyan or the magenta color, kind of the darker pink color. And so we'd load that color, take all of our prints back to the front, and send them all through again. And so we had to do that 4 times, and it was very meticulous. You had to make sure that everything was lined up just perfect, because if on the 3rd run, when we ran through the yellow, if it was just off the slightest bit, all that color would be off, and you would be able to tell. So for a long time, that was a method that was used. And again, it was much faster than certainly doing it by hand or the previous methods before that. So here you can kind of see a breakdown of an offset press or the lithography press. And so we have different blankets or cylinders that we use to transfer the image. And we come back to, again, it operates off the process that that grease or oil do not mix with water. And so we use a process where we have our ink, the color that we're going to put on the paper, and then we have our paper is fed into the press, and then we have 3 cylinders. We have the plate, the blanket, and the impression cylinder, and the combination of these 3 allow us to transfer the image onto the plate, then to the blanket, and then what gets impressed onto the actual image. And then there's the inking and dampening, where the ink it applies the ink and dampening fluid to the plate, and then it gets transferred to the paper, and then the paper gets stacked somewhere on the outside. And so it's a very simple breakdown of how we transfer an image onto a plate, and that then transfer the image onto the blanket cylinder, then to the impression cylinder, which then puts it on the piece of paper. Today, now in the 21st century, so much of it is digitized or in the digital environment where we do our design. This kind of ties in with the second video that you watched of kind of a modern company and how they would do production prints. And so in this case, now often what we would use is the image is actually burned into a metal plate, and that's our image plate, which gets wrapped around a cylinder. And so what you see here on each one of these towers is there will be the image. There will be the metal plate that has that particular image. And keep in mind that image is going to be different for each color because what one color lays down, there's a different, kind of like with screen printing, there's a different screen for each color. Well, there's going to be a different plate for each of the 4 colors. We typically now, those are, again, it's all done in a digital environment where we design on the computer. We use our software, and then we have special machines that burn or etch these images into the plates. So that all happens in a digital environment, and then we load the cylinders into each one of these towers. So each one of these towers would represent the 4 colors of the CMYK. So as a piece of paper would maybe start the process at one end, let's say over here, as it comes through, then it goes through the first tower where it gets the cyan, it goes through the second tower where it gets the magenta, it goes through the third tower where it gets the yellow, and then it goes through the last tower where it gets the key color. As it goes through this machine, that after it gets exposed with that color, it goes through a heat process where it dries it very quickly so that it can go on to the next one. And as you watch in that video, that they are able to produce thousands of copies over the course of the day, which is 10 times faster than what was previously able to do with the old offset press. And so it's a pretty impressive environment, and it's what most production level companies, print production companies, are using now in order to use the lithography process and produce all kinds of works, mailings that would go out, magazine covers, all types of publications fall under this route where they're being used and developed with the lithography process. Then that concludes the Chapter 25 lithography lecture.